Hi, it's Lee from Colouring Queen, and today I'm colouring a card from Rebecca Jones with my Prismacolor pencils. Now, obviously, I won't have time to send it off this year, but I'm getting in early on next year. So it's Christmas, and like many of you, I've been hitting the shops, mainly just to look for ideas of what to eat on Christmas Day and Boxing Day this year. I've only actually bought things online for gifts, and that's only for Buddy and Millie, although I may buy David something, we'll see. So I've managed to buy Millie two little presents. One is the smallest present ever that I've wrapped up. It's a cat bell in the shape of Minnie Mouse. uh, and as I've managed to avoid the shops in person, I've missed all of the Christmas carols and music that is non-stop played at this time of the year. And I actually thought that Christmas carols probably originated in Victorian times, like so many Christmas things as we know it. But I actually was wrong. Christmas carols have actually been traced back all the way to the 4th century, originating in Rome, according to the University of Plymouth. And of course, during that time, they were in Latin. I can't imagine singing a carol in Latin, and my knowledge of Latin is limited to some legal terms and certainly not a whole song. Now, initially, the songs were tributes to the seasons and to honour the agricultural god Saturn. There was actually a pagan festival to honour Saturn called Saturnalia, which was held near the winter solstice. And the winter solstice is when sun is the furthest away or south in the northern hemisphere, and this is usually late December, and the furthest north in the southern hemisphere, where it's late June. And the day has the actual least daylight of other days and the longest night. So I have all my knowledge of the winter solstice from the Big Bang Theory. So, as well as songs or carols, there was a big feast and gifts were given, and wreaths and candles were used for decoration. And it seems like it was a pretty good time. When I lived in Sydney, the local IKEA used to have a winter solstice event each year that was pretty similar to what I was describing. Now, later on, the carols made their way to churches, and then that's when they were associated with Christmas. So, one well known Christmas song is, of course, Jingle Bells, but it wasn't actually written as a holiday song. The song was actually written by a well known songwriter, James Lord Pierpont, and there's a bit of a dispute when and where the song was written, but it was published in 1857 as a comedic romance song called One Horse Open Sleigh. Now, some people believe that it was written at the Simpson Tavern in Medford, Massachusetts in 1850, and others believe it was written later in the 1850s in Savannah, which is where Pierpont eventually settled. So, interestingly, it's believed that Pierpont was actually in California during 1850. And like many others, he was chasing a gold rush that, again, for like many others, didn't leave him any better off. So some people do not believe that he wrote it in the Simpson Tavern, and it seemed more likely that he wrote it in Savannah, but who knows? One Horse Open Sleigh, as it was then called, was said to be about a risque, romantic, unchaperoned ride on a sleigh. And the jingle bells referred to were the bells that were attached to the horse harness, which were used to help avoid collisions in the snow in the mid 19th century. In the original song, it was said to reflect the sleigh races that took place in Salem Street, Massachusetts, and a sleigh crash. So I guess without the advantage of traffic lights and things like that, the only way to hear oncoming sleighs when you've got a lot of snow would be the jingle bells. Now, as it was popular at the time, the song was performed by minstrels, which of course has, in modern times, left a little bit of a tarnish on the song. So 2 years after it was first published, the name was changed to Jingle Bells, and it was said to have been played in church services for Thanksgiving. So it was considered a bit too risque for the Christmas services. And at the time, Pierpont's brother was actually a pastor in the local church over the road from where he lived. So that kind of makes sense for that theory. Now, although this song is a hugely popular family song, Pierpont himself, he wasn't much of a family man. He actually left his wife and children in 1849 to chase those riches in the gold rush in California, and he returned pretty well empty-handed. And his wife died not long after he came back, and he ended up remarrying the daughter of the Savannah mayor, and he actually left his children that he had with his first wife. He left them with their grandfather and sort of remarried and had a whole new family. And it wasn't only his family that he didn't support, he was also a supporter of the Confederacy. And while his father and brother took a real stand against slavery, later on in his life, he would actually spend a lot of time writing music in support of the Confederacy. So a bit of controversy around old Pierpont. He ended up actually being an uncle by marriage to the J.P. Morgan financier family. So he died in 1893 without really making any big money with Jingle Bells, and he actually had to make ends meet by teaching the piano. And after his death, Jingle Bells became hugely popular. Now, there was a number of reasons for that, and it's mainly technology. With the advent of the record player or the phonograph as it was then known, and then later the radio, from the late 1890s, it was actually recorded by popular musicians of the time and, still is. And so technology just really made this song way more popular than it ever was in his lifetime, as so many things are. So, as well as being a catchy song, one thing it was known for was being the first song ever to be broadcast from space. In 1965, it was broadcast in late December, a week or so just before Christmas, and a couple of astronauts had a little bit of Christmas fun. So I'll quote the article directly. So 9 days before Christmas in 1965, two astronauts aboard Gemini 6 had just completed a rendezvous with Gemini 7 when the crew suddenly gave a troubling report to Mission Control. "We have an object. It looks like a satellite going from north to south, up in a polar orbit. He's in a very low trajectory, traveling from north to south, and he has a very high climbing ratio. It looks like it might even be a very low, it looks like he might be going to re-enter soon. Now stand by. You might just let me try to pick up that thing." Now, the tense report of the unidentified flying object was suddenly broken by the sound of jingle bells, with Wally Shearer playing a tiny harmonica, accompanied by Tom Stafford shaking a handful of small sleigh bells that they brought along for the space voyage. So these guys like a bit of a laugh, but it's interesting out of all the songs that they could have used, they chose Jingle Bells, and they even brought the little bells with them so that they could pretend that Santa was on his way traveling to deliver all of those presents on his sleigh. But not everyone likes Jingle Bells, and not everyone has a great sense of humor about it. And I don't know personally if I'd like hearing it or any Christmas carol 700 to 800 times a day. Now, that's the amount of times that Nick Wilder alleged his neighbour Lisa Falcone, who lives across the road in Upper East Side of New York, plays the tune every day over the Christmas period. Now, by December of 2016, Nick Wilder, who has a home office, had enough of the constant jingle bells, and he actually filed a complaint for nuisance and an injunction to stop his neighbour Lisa using the outside side speakers of her home to play the song 17 hours a day. Now, as the speakers were outside, it could be heard throughout the residential area. Now, As the speakers were outside, it could be heard throughout the residential area. Now, the Christmas music was part of Lisa's Christmas display outside her, get this, 27-room, 725 square foot mansion on East 67th Street. Now, the display was set up as a winter wonderland and it featured polar bears, penguins, Santa decorated. There were pine trees with lights, stags, and dancing reindeer. And the deer's mouths actually opened up and down to mime the version of Jingle Bells each year. So from 7 a.m. in the morning to midnight, Jingle Bells plays non-stop on loudspeaker outside her home. Now, Nick Wilder argued that he and the other neighbours have a right to enjoy their homes in peace, saying that the constant song has become the soundtrack of his nightmares. Now, Wilder had checked legal fees because he was, of course, an attorney and he represented himself. So he was prepared to fight it out in court to make it stop. And others in the neighbourhood agreed that the sound of the music on the street was just too much and for far too long. Now, a year and a half later, in June of 2018, an order was made asking Lisa Falcone to show why she should be allowed to blast the loudspeaker, preventing her neighbours from enjoying their space in peace. And by July of 2019, there was no response from her. It seems like the case had just disappeared, with both parties failing to turn up since that initial complaint was made in 2016. Maybe it was all resolved. Maybe it was all resolved amicably after all. Who knows? But it seems Nick Wilder is not the only one that has troubles with non-stop Christmas music. In 2009, in Arizona, Sheriff Joe Arpaio ordered the county jails that house 8,000 inmates to play holiday music for 12 hours a day. And not everyone enjoyed the Christmas carols. 6 inmates in Maricopa County each sued on the basis that it was cruel and unusual punishment, claiming that they were being forced to participate in religious celebrations. And they also demanded $250,000 in damages. Now, the sheriff argued that the music that was played was from all countries. It was inclusive of all faiths. It included the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, Big Crosby, Alvin and the Chipmunks, and he also claimed that they were wasting the court's time with a frivolous court action and were acting like the Grinch who stole Christmas. And it seems the court agreed, with Judge Ros Silva dismissing the case and claim for damages. Now, getting into the festive spirit, the sheriff issued his statement in red and green letters and stated that the music would continue. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I would hate to listen to Christmas music nonstop like that for hours on end. I always pity those in retail having to listen to it, although when I've worked in retail, I've managed to just block it out after a while. I've finished my Christmas card for next year, and you can see what I've done on here. Added a bit of background and added a little bit of snow. It actually took me way longer to do this card than I anticipated because of the outside envelope and the inner part of the card. But anyway, I will be back after Christmas for more colouring with you. And in the meantime, I hope that you enjoy the holidays and have time to relax and maybe even listen to Jingle Bells. So that's it from me, and until next time, happy colouring.